Hello and welcome to the GGG podcast. I'm Paul and this is Phil. Before we get started, quick reminder to click that subscribe button. And if you're interested, you can also follow us on TikTok at Golden Glazed Gaming. Also, if you listen to podcasts in other locations outside of YouTube, we are on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. Soon to be YouTube music podcasts, which is interesting. Everything is just becoming YouTube, I guess.
Hey, you want to listen to us while you're driving in your car? You want to listen to us while you're at work and you're sneaking in an earbud? More power to you. That's probably the best way to do this.
Yeah, probably. But a lot of people into the video podcasts, so I am glad that we're doing it. How you been this week, Phil? What have you been playing?
Oh, I've been very good. Thank you, Paul. I've been playing... So I didn't know that the Cyberpunk 2.0 thing would launch, so I downloaded that. I thought it was going to come out with Phantom Liberty, which was technically yesterday or today. So I downloaded that once I saw that it was up because I wanted to try that out. I've been playing more Baldur's Gate, a little bit more Lies of P, and Magic the Gathering Arena. I've kind of been dancing around. Just before we started today, I was playing the original Marvel Spider-Man. So I've kind of been everywhere with my PlayStation and PC gaming life.
Right on.
What have you been playing?
I mean, some usual suspects. I've been playing a lot of Mortal Kombat. Finished the story, which was pretty good. Although I will say that the end was kind of ridiculous. And actually, when you beat the end, the trophy or the achievement is like, what just happened? And that's exactly how I felt. So it was a little comforting to know that like they know that what they just presented me with was pretty freaking ridiculous. But yeah, so that's been good. I've been doing a lot of the invasions mode in that, which is like the board mode where you walk around and unlock a bunch of things. And I do like it, but it's not. I preferred the crypt from MK11. To be totally honest, I like the puzzle aspect to it because it added another element of gameplay. But anyway, been playing a lot of that. Been playing a lot of Starfield. I am pretty deep into Starfield now. I've really gotten into base building, which like is there's so much stuff you can do that is really, really cool. And again, it's really awesome if you're willing to work and put in all that effort into the game. You will get something awesome out of it, but God, does it take a lot of time and energy and brain power.
I feel like a lot of people are gonna fall off of Starfield, sadly. Because like I've even slid off of it just because there's so many good things out right now, but there's just so much kind of cruft that you have to work your way through before you understand what's going on. And you're like, oh, I can build. I forgot that you could build bases in that game until you said it just now.
Yeah, it's not cheap. We'll say that. So, but yeah, I mean, really, like, I don't think I've ever beat Skyrim. Like, I think I just played all of the campaigns and quest lines that I wanted to, and then just never actually finished the regular game. So that lines up with my Bethesda experience. But I wanted to shout out a indie game that I have been playing, which is called Void Crew, and it has just gone into early access release on Steam. I think it's only available on PC right now, and I will not officially recommend the game quite yet because it's still pretty early. But essentially what it is, it's kind of like Sea of Thieves, where it aesthetically, I think it looks like No Man's Sky, and you play with it's preferable to play with 3 other people, so you have 4 people in a party, and you guys are going on space missions. And it's got a little bit of like a Star Trek vibe of like, okay, we're gonna send one person out to go gather the thing. We got one person piloting. We got another guy on the guns, and then we got the guy in the engine room trying to keep the ship afloat. And so if you have some friends you can play it with, or if you're very social and love talking to random people online, I would recommend getting Void Crew somewhere down the line when it's a little bit less glitchy and more put together. But it is very fun. It's got good mechanics, good foundation.
I am so into this now that you've started describing this. I'm just like,
yeah.
I just looked it up and
be
I
happy
love
to play
Sea of
with
Thieves. Yeah, hell yeah. I'm super into it. I like the sort of like random chaos of Sea of Thieves and just doing like kind of a job, but a fun job game with your friends. Oh, I'm most likely gonna get this. All right, we can play. Hell yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I think it's around $20 on Steam. So yeah, anybody else who's interested, head on over there. But let's get into the game releases this week. Most notably, and probably the number one thing everyone's excited for this week, is Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Phil, I believe you got your hands on it. Yes?
So I haven't played Phantom Liberty. I've been playing Cyberpunk 2.0, because I haven't finished it yet, like the original game. I never finished it. So I decided to like, you know what? Now's a good time to step back in, and I'm very excited. I'm probably gonna pick up Phantom Liberty because what they do with their characters, like what they did with Keanu Reeves, what they did with kind of all the ancillary characters as well, is great. And to see Idris Elba. I never know how to pronounce his name. Idris. To see Idris Elba absolutely playing like a hard-nosed cop a la The Wire, but it's the future.
Yeah.
I'm super in. I'm in.
Yeah. Everybody has been singing its praises. Idris Elba looks exactly like he does in real life. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into more of it later when we get into our main topic. But I was also really happy to see Keanu Reeves, like his new model, looks so good.
Yeah. It seems like they added more, or they recorded it initially, but there is new Johnny Silverhand, Keanu Reeves stuff. So that's also really freaking cool.
Awesome. All right, well, let's not get too into that because we're going to talk about it later. Next is FIFA 24, EA Sports FC 24 has come out this week.
This is an interesting one. I'm not like a FIFA guy. I admire the sport from afar. I've never played the video games, but this is notably EA's first European football soccer game that is not attached to FIFA. And it's crazy because like EA built its house kind of on the stone that is FIFA.
Yeah.
And we're kind of in this space now of like, okay, did FIFA fumble the bag and they're just not going to make the money off this? / can EA do it on their own? Or does that FIFA name matter more than the actual game? We're going to find that out soon, and that's interesting.
Yeah, I hope it's good, but I hope this isn't just like, FIFA with a disguise on. Like my father is a huge soccer fan, or as he would say, football fan. And growing up, I played tons of FIFA games. I played Pro Evolution Soccer. Was like the hipster version of it that everybody's like, oh, the graphics are worse, but the gameplay is better, man. And so like I'm curious to see what this is. I think a lot of FIFA fans out there were really aggravated with where the game was going. I can't speak to it too much because I really haven't played any modern iteration of it. But I know the microtransactions were a problem, but I feel like there's a problem in every sports game. So
yeah, I think sports games now are probably next to Fortnite and games like that, just a microtransaction hive, and probably more so than games like Fortnite or Battle Pass games where you're like paying to unlock more stuff because the game itself is like a sports game, so there's not really too much you can add or take away. I don't know.
I mean, like I would put sports games in a whole nother category of microtransaction manipulation, because like at least when I buy a battle pass, it shows you what you can progress and get. Like instead they're like, we're gonna sell you these digital cards for your My Team, and you'll get what you get. It's just like, so these cards, they're not even like real, so it's not like I could like sell these and make something off of them in the future. So
and what's to be said for Star Wars fans, when Battlefront came out with those like cards that were expendable and in loot boxes, we got so pissed and so annoying that they literally changed it.
Yep.
And I think most sports fans are just like, listen, I just love FIFA and I want to feel like I'm FIFAing. I don't care.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hope EA Sports FC 24 can be a good game, and will prove once and for all that EA is not a terrible company. Which, who knows? Okay, next game. Sonic Frontier: The Final Horizon. This is a DLC for Sonic Frontier. I believe it is the final DLC, unless the name is really deceiving. But have you played any Sonic Frontier, Phil?
I have not, but I have heard that Sonic Frontier, The Final Horizon, but actually is coming down the pipeline. I've heard a lot of good about this game, and I was looking at my PlayStation. I'm like, okay, what games do I want to have installed on here? And Sonic Frontier was one that I was like, oh, that says it's on one of the like PlayStation plans. It's the one I don't own.
Sure.
But it made me consider buying it because, like, I kind of love Sonic. He's my DNA. Is this in this DLC? From what I've heard, I think you could add playing as Knuckles, Amy, and Tails.
I am not exactly sure. It's very possible. They seem to be throwing a lot of content in, so that's great. Yeah, I mean, Sonic Frontiers, from what I could tell, is it's a fun Sonic game set in a very realistic looking world, which was a little odd. I guess they were going with that vibe from the movie. But I actually know someone who worked QA on Sonic Frontiers. So, and I know that he was pretty proud of like all the progress that they made with that game. And he did say that the DLCs looked really promising. So for any Sonic fans out there, comes out this week. Hope you're excited. And I hope it gives you what you're looking for.
Just to confirm, this does allow you to play as Amy, Knuckles, Tails, and Sage, who I don't know who Sage is.
I don't know who Sage is either.
But sounds cool.
Sounds very cool.
And then there's one more game on the list, yeah?
Yeah. Party Animals, which I think technically came out at the tail end of last week. But I wanted to include it just because it was getting some media attention. So Party Animals available for Xbox and PC. It is very much, if anybody out there has played like Gang Beasts, kind of similar to Fall Guys, kind of similar to Mario Party. I would say that the big separator here is that all of the models and the animals and the characters that you play as look so freaking adorable.
Cute AF.
Cute AF. And like it seems like you could have a lot of fun. There some of the reviews coming out saying that there were some server issues, and also there wasn't really like an offline mode. But if you have a big group of friends, I think it's up to 8 players. You can have a fun time with this game. I've considered picking it up myself. And
it's in that like realm of a specific. I think Gang Beasts is the thing that immediately reminds me the most of, because it's kind of like fun with physics type of games where you're beating the crap out of each other. But in this one, there's other game modes that make it a little bit more like Fall Guys / Wipeout and Mario Party, where it's just like you have to avoid a certain thing or stay on a certain thing for an amount of time, and you're just fighting with every ounce of strength you can to hold on to the triggers to make that happen. I think it looks super great. I know the connectivity issues, they said that there was an offline mode to the game, or like you could play it without being connected to the internet, but that wasn't actually the case. And I guess the developers, who are the person who wrote for the developers, there was like a translation issue between what they speak and the English that we had displayed on Steam. So there was no, I guess, ill will, allegedly. But still looked really, really fun. The game was super hyped, and I intend to play it at some point.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully they can keep coming out with great stuff for it. I loved all the costumes, honestly. Lots of unlicensed things, like you can get like a Darth Vader outfit and stuff like that. And I also liked that it appears that in the game you can buy everything through in-game currency instead of doing microtransactions.
That's amazing.
So that is awesome as well. All right. Speaking of Microsoft, kind of going back to some of the news we talked about last week, Phil, and how some leaked documents, and we'll get into the Microsoft leak as well, but revealed how Microsoft wanted to buy Nintendo. Capcom has come out and said that they would gracefully decline any kind of Microsoft acquisition. And
smart on their behalf.
Oh yeah, always say no to their first offer.
Well, I think like Capcom maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think they would have been in more of a position, sort of like Marvel circa the late 90s, where they're just selling film rights of all these different characters. Mm-hmm. I feel like Capcom then might have been like, all right, someone's going to buy us? Okay, good, because Mega Man is not doing anything right now. We can't get him off the couch. He's depressed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the like early Lost Planet years, that would have been the time. Yeah. I don't know. It's I think we should just go ahead and get into the next bit of news here, Phil, because I think it really opens up the conversation.
Yeah, so here's some more leak news from the big Xbox leak that happened last week. There was so many pages of PDF to dig through. That news is like kind of still coming out about it. Most specifically, they announced their next Xbox, which is kind of like an iterative version of their Xbox, their next controller, and some big game releases and like the windows for them. So first of all, they internally were talking about the Brooklyn project, which was the next Xbox. Sort of like an Xbox Series X Pro. I think more memory and some other like minor tweaks, like I think the Wi-Fi is a little bit faster. But most notably, it's a frickin' tube.
Yeah.
It's
not a box.
It's not a box.
I don't know, Microsoft. Think about hindsight.
They're forgetting their roots. Remember who you are.
I'm really curious as to, Phil, do you know at all how these leaks were leaked, or who leaked them, or?
So, yes, a little bit.
Please.
What I've heard is their court case. There had been some issues in the past where they had leaked a bunch of they had submitted a bunch of documents to court that had been like Sharpied over. So relevant information was not available. It seems like their team just doesn't actually know a lot about like when they have to submit a PDF version of it, that if you open it in like, File Explorer, it'll have the stuff grayed out and covered over. But if you open it in other programs like Adobe, for instance, you can just kind of get rid of all that whiteout and Sharpie over stuff. So that's how we found all of this. Just the court documents were available with this stuff annexed out, but people found out that you could just, find and delete that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that does sound like Microsoft and them forcing everyone to use their software in Office.
Yeah. No one would ever use Adobe. Of course they'd use Microsoft.
Of course.
Whatever program we have.
Nobody uses any Adobe products at all. But what about, is that how Phil Spencer's emails specifically got out, or was that from something else?
I'm not sure about the emails, because I know in this, like, there was some internal dialogue about the PlayStation 5 and that release, and then how acquiring Nintendo would be a career moment for him.
Sure.
I don't know if those were emails or internal messages or, like, they do reviews on every different like game that comes out, every different console that comes out, internally to like disperse to their people so they're all on the same page.
Sure.
Which is so I think that might have been some of that.
Yeah.
But
okay. Thank you for all of that.
Of course.
Just for the sake of being a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. So I just find, especially the new Xbox and everything, there's always usually a leak about the next thing that's coming out. So that kind of makes sense. But specifically with Phil's emails, like I think this might be a PR move. Or I think he's putting out publicly that he wants to buy other companies. He also he went on to say with the Nintendo leak, I found this out after we talked about it on last week's podcast, but he went on to say that buying Nintendo would be the, I don't exactly remember the right verbiage, but it would essentially be like his great white whale.
And I think the term is a career moment. I was checking that earlier. Yeah.
And which to me is so weird that people are like, my career moment is when I bought something. And it's like, but, I get it. They're messing around with big money and whatnot. But yeah, I think this is a publicity thing. I think that this is maybe to start to inception a little bit of like, hey, companies in Japan, if you're not feeling really confident in your forecast, we'll throw a bunch of money at you and buy you. And I said this last week on the podcast, and I will say it again. It's just, Microsoft, you have lots of resources on your own. Make some good stuff on your own. Don't just buy something and then be like, I don't know what happened. Let's buy another thing. It's...
But isn't it the most gamer move to buy a bunch of things and then not actually use them? Like I have an army and a library of games on PlayStation on computer, and I played maybe 3 of them.
Oh yeah, totally. You should. My Steam library is a dumpster fire of, it's not dumpster fire, but it's a landfill of games, some of which I've never even played, but because they're bargain bin.
It's a dragon's hoard. Like, they're all wonderful baubles and amazing pieces of art, and sometimes I just look at it, I'm like, nah, I don't know. Is that, like, do I want to invest 3 hours in something that someone put a year of their life into?
I feel that I got programmed in me just to be very anti-monopoly, and I think we need more companies, not less companies. And like, I know that I tend to gravitate towards PlayStation things, but it's not because I love Sony unconditionally. It's because Sony still makes their own good games. And they also, like, when their games are done, they usually allow them to be done. They're like, okay, people aren't really into Killzone anymore. Let's let them make Horizon. They want to make a new game. Let them make a new game.
Totally.
And so Microsoft is not, I still can't get Phil Spencer's interview out of my head, where he's just like, we can't just make good games and expect gamers to like us. It's like, what do you think this is about? So
I mean, to an extent, I want to stick with my Phils and say, like, they had some good games on the Xbox One, like Sunset Overdrive was, I think, such an amazing game that so many people didn't play, and I think Sea of Thieves became a pretty amazing game. They have a lot of good stuff, but as we learned with the PlayStation 3, you got to consistently make like a couple of like 10s in a row for people to be like, let me give them another shot,
Yeah. I mean, Xbox used to be like the place for multiplayer gaming. Like even though Call of Duty was on, other systems and everything, like, it was, you played Call of Duty, you played the competitive multiplayer games on Xbox.
It's true.
And I think maybe during that time they just leaned on those third-party publishers to like carry their console. and they're like, well, we still have Gears of War. Let's make a fifth one.
Yeah.
So anyway, Xbox, I am only saying this to you to encourage you to do better. Make a good game. Maybe fix Halo Infinite. Cyberpunk got fixed. Can you fix Halo Infinite? Okay.
Fix what is it? Redfall, Nightfall, whatever that one was.
Yeah, really. Like
in that era, they have a couple of game announcements they have that they're expecting to make. They have a release schedule that leaked as well.
Excellent.
This year, so this is FYE 21E. I don't know what that means. They're sort of broken up into, and you know what? Maybe they're running a little bit late with their projections. But Doom Eternal, Starfield was supposed to come out, I think, quite a bit earlier than we got. But next year, it seems like they have a couple games planned. Indiana Jones, the Bethesda game that's being worked on. An Oblivion remaster, which has been rumored and seems pretty much confirmed now. Starfield DLC seems like it's going to be coming next year, as well as some Elder Scrolls expansion. Then the year after that is when we start to kick into some really interesting stuff. For example, Doom Year Zero, which I don't know if that's a prequel.
Okay.
Then Project Kestrel, which I don't know exactly what that means. Another Elder Scrolls expansion, which means they're sticking with Elder Scrolls Online, which is pretty impressive. And then the year that I think would be 2025, they have Elder Scrolls 6 planned, a Fallout 3 remaster, a Ghostwire Tokyo sequel, and Dishonored 3.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I think that's great. I love it. That's a lot of Bethesda.
It is.
That's a lot of Bethesda.
Leaning hard on that crutch.
Yeah, so it's like they're not known for like cranking the games out. Like a lot of what you mentioned were remasters, and I am glad they're keeping Elder Scrolls Online going. But where
right?
Where did all those other companies you ate go?
Yeah, they're just like we're just sitting on them. Like when's the next Fable supposed to come out? When's the sequel? What was the rhythm game that came out this year from them that was pretty incredible? Hi-Fi Rush. That's also Bethesda. Whoops.
Yeah. So, okay.
And last but not least, they have a new controller in the works. It's Sebile is the code name for it. It's got interchangeable analog controls, like you can switch it out like you can with the current Xbox Elite, and then haptic feedback. So they're kind of copying off of unprecedented. I will say, I think this started with the Switch when they first announced that they had like the super haptics in their controller, the little game where you could like guess how many marbles was in your. But then PlayStation picked up the ball and ran it downfield, and now Xbox is like, "Hey, check it out, Mom, me too." And
I will say, and to be fair to Microsoft and to give Sony a little bit of shit now, like I love the haptic feedback in the controller, the PS5 controller. Give me a game that actually uses it properly. Like Astro's Playroom used it amazingly. The pre-installed game on your PS5, it was like I wanted to show everyone, like, come play this, feel it in your hands, it's amazing. And then I play any other game and it's like, oh, it kind of does a thing. You feel how it kind of does a thing. And so it's just like, I know that it takes up battery power. I'm willing to charge my controller longer and more often, but just give me a game that actually uses haptic feedback. Give me a game where it feels like it's raining in my controller, like Astro's Playground.
I think it's done the thing that we all kind of suspected it would, where pretty much Sony exclusives use it to a degree. Like they'll give you the trigger resistance you might feel if you're walking on a different surface, but then most games kind of like just throw out the basics, you know?
Yeah. I'm hoping that Spider-Man really takes it to a whole nother level, because
I've heard good things.
Because Miles Morales haptic feedback was very meh, and even the remaster I think was just a copy and pasting of the Miles Morales haptic feedback.
The swinging felt cool. You know, it give you that resistance when the web hit something.
It totally
that was
does.
about it.
It feels cool, but it's just like you have this really cool thing. I remember playing it for the first time and being like, "This is so cool," and like just use it more. It's not just a gimmick. It's a real, tactile sensation, and I think
it's a tool for storytelling.
Yes, keep it going.
Huh.
Ooh, all right.
Let's get off Microsoft for a second. Let's let them have a minute.
Yeah, all right, Microsoft. It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm angry. I'm pent up this week.
We love you, but
we love you. I love you. I want Halo to be good, and that's why I'm angry. All right. So we got a couple of voice actor leaks. The first one is from Kestis from Jedi Survivor. The actor's name is Cameron Monaghan, and he essentially confirmed that Jedi 3, I guess it can't be Jedi Survivor 3, but Jedi 3 is in the works and going to be coming out, and apparently they already got him locked in for production, which is awesome. I really enjoyed Jedi Survivor. Jedi Fallen Order I had some problems with because I think it was very much of a prototype of a game. But I know that a lot of people also really enjoyed Fallen Order. But Jedi Survivor, really had a good time with it. I'm not surprised that it's getting another game, just from how well it did in reviews and how well Star Wars fans have latched onto it. Even like, I know people who are watching Ahsoka right now, and no spoilers, but people watching Ahsoka think that there are connections between Jedi Survivor and the Ahsoka series.
Well, there are some like tonal and I guess not necessarily location specific things that are the same, but there's some adjacent themes that are pretty fun.
Yes, I would say universe mechanics.
Yes.
That are similar and that makes sense. And all of this to dig Star Wars out of its anyway, no, that's my own shit.
It'd be cool if we had a trilogy of good Star Wars games, because I don't know if we have.
What? Well,
like,
do you count Jedi Outcast 1, Jedi Outcast 2, and then Jedi Academy as a trilogy of Star Wars games?
That is technically a trilogy. I mean, I feel like Jedi Outcast, it should be Jedi Outcast. Well, it was Jedi Outcast Academy, huh?
It was Jedi Outcast, Outcast 2, and then Jedi Academy.
Okay. You know what, I'll give it that. Because I was just thinking of KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2, both pretty excellent.
Yes.
But indeed. Then they never did it. Well, the third one was online, and I didn't play it. I mean, 3 pod racing games would be great, but
I mean, I really loved Star Wars Squadrons, but EA learned their lesson. We're like, we're not going to make any promises. It is what it is, and you guys can take it.
I was just looking at that on my games list, and I remembered the moment that I played that in VR, and I was like, oh, this is really amazing. But that was the end of it.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway, I don't. Did you enjoy Jedi Survivor, Phil? Did you play it?
I loved it. Some of my favorite boss fights this year were in that game. Like one specifically, I'll just say the Wind boss fight was one of the most cinematic and enjoyable things that I've done in a video game this year. That was like heavily scripted.
Yeah. Sometimes heavily scripted isn't a bad thing. You give, I think it allows the game director to really take the reins and do something spectacular that you can't always do when you give the player every single option. So,
well, speaking of scripted, let me slide right into our next voice actor kerfuffle. The Baldur's Gate voice actor for Asterion. I don't know the actor's name. But he claims that there's an undiscovered 2-hour section of the game that people haven't found or aren't talking about yet, which is A, pretty incredible, but B, also, I kind of wonder if maybe he recorded something and then it didn't make it into the game.
Sure.
He's got us all on a wild goose chase, which I would love. If it was actually in the game, but I'd also kind of love it if he was just kind of like, yeah, I recorded a lot more stuff than that, and I hope that Larian kind of gets along like, dude, you can't just say this stuff.
Because now we're gonna have to update the game and put it back in.
Now we gotta add a lot of stuff. There was, you know how many dongs we're gonna have to animate in 3D now?
The scene was entirely about dongs. That's all it was about.
It's our favorite scene, but we had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I listen again. I think Baldur's Gate is maybe the opposite side of like, hey, I really love that scripted moment versus every time I read something about Baldur's Gate, and like that was nowhere near my experience. But it's really cool to see that there are so many different varieties in that game. I guess they're all scripted, but it's just that game is like a web and a tree at the same time of just branches and opportunities and possibilities.
Yeah, I mean it is by definition scripted, but like the amount, I think when other game companies were afraid of, you know, all of the effort and stuff that they had put into making Baldur's Gate 3, it was mostly about the writing and the amount of paths that you could go down and how you could really, you know, approach anything how you wanted to do it. And so like I'm not surprised if there honestly is a 2-hour section that is in the game that people just haven't found because they haven't done these very weird specific things in this specific order to get this specific result, which gives you this scene.
Totally.
But yeah, I just think it's incredible that there's still things in Baldur's Gate that people haven't seen yet. So it's a testament to how deep that game is and how much replayability that game has. Is awesome.
Yeah. Can't wait for my next replay. Hopefully I'll find it, but probably not. There's so much. There's so much in that game.
Have you finished a campaign in that game?
Not yet. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So.
All right.
We'll see.
All right, moving on along, some more news with the Unity engine. They've adjusted their policies after the fee backlash has continued online. There have been a couple of games that have been canceled. Most notably, I think Nintendo has canceled a remake of this racing game. I don't think it was actually going to be releasing in the States, but it was going to be releasing in Japan, and along with a bunch of other indie games that are canceling or releasing early. And so Unity has not walked back their original statements about how they are going to essentially be charging just kind of a royalty and distribution fee depending on how well a game is doing. So essentially how it works is Unity was a free engine, and now they're saying, well, if you sell above certain thresholds, then we're going to want little fees. So if you get over, 500,000, then it's this fee. If you get over 1 million, then it's this fee. And people there's been a lot of backlash, and they haven't wanted to do that. The main reason is how Unity determines when players are playing the game or if they've downloaded the game, and how that data is tracked. And I think that they're worried about Unity manipulating the numbers so that these smaller companies are being charged. They're like, well, you had 1.4 million downloads, and then being like, well, half of those are pirated. So like, I don't know, we're not going to pay for those. So they've kind of, I think they haven't really walked back any policies. They've kind of just opened up a dialogue with developers, which is something that they should have done before they just decided that they are going to charge something.
I think this is one of those deals where it was probably in the terms and conditions that are 600 pages long, so nobody probably read it, understandably, or at least the majority of people didn't read it. But it's also, nothing is ever really free, that's the except for this show. Watch this show. It's
no ads.
Free. No ads. Please let us advertise for you. But I don't know. It's a tough thing because I would expect Unity would want to make some money off of it, but to kind of pull the rug under people seems a little scummy.
Yeah.
But it's a free engine is a free engine to like make a game that could change your life, and if you have to give a little bit of it to Unity, I understand.
Yes, absolutely. I am in no way a developer, but I also can see how Unity will want to make money off of their successful. It's not their product, but if you use their tool, I know there's a lot of hate on the internet right now for Unity, and I'm not necessarily coming to their defense. I think where they messed up is communication. It's you could have let the developers who are using the game know this instead of just doing a press release and just telling everybody. But I do understand, like, you're giving away free software. You want to be compensated for this tool that you have provided. So it does make a little bit of sense.
Well, their new terms and conditions include something about like it only affects games that made over $1 million or something like that. Like you have to be a pretty successful game. And I wonder how much of this was just them not necessarily having the best like communication team, like you were saying. And that most of these deals will have to do with like big developers that use their software. Because I'm sure, if Ubisoft is using Unity to develop something, they're gonna be upset if someone else is using it for free and they paid a fee to use it. So this might be their way of evening the playing field. Again, I'm like you, in no way as a developer, but I can kind of see where they're coming from. Although, I don't know. I'm always rooting for the little guy. So Unity, you have enough money probably right now, right?
I don't know. Maybe they hired a new CFO and he was like, "Yo, we need to be making money off of this or something."
You guys, we haven't made any money in 30 years. How does this company still afloat?
We got to be careful. Microsoft's going to buy us out, and then they're really going to charge.
It's true. We're going to be on Game Pass.
Last on the news list, we have Payday 3, which came out last week. We talked about it a little bit. The devs have officially released a statement apologizing to the community for a poor launch. This was pretty surprising to me because I knew that there were problems and it wasn't getting like amazing reviews, but that the devs would go so far as to apologize to the community definitely is like, oh, I didn't think the game was that bad. But I guess, dealing with server issues, there's a lot of UI issues. There's just a lot of accessibility things. I think it's all the nooks and crannies, it's like they built a deck, but they forgot all the screws and
oops, all nooks.
So like you can
no crannies.
Exactly. You understand.
I've heard some of the main issues is that a good amount of people, if not a plurality of them have of players of the game bought it. I know it's available on Game Pass, but people who paid $70 for this game, some of them were just not able to connect to the network. It is another always online game, so that means you paid $70 for a program that is essentially a paperweight.
Yeah.
And I think, not to be too much of a cynic, but Payday is one of those games that you wait a couple years to buy anyway.
Yeah.
Thankfully, not everybody's like me, because then they wouldn't make their initial money. But I feel like these games, Payday 2, I know launched with some issues, and it really kind of hit its stride after year one, where they added a bunch of content and ironed everything out. I would hope that a lot of their clientele, a lot of the gamers who play Payday understand this. But I also I get pissed when I get a game day one and the download servers are all messed up, or I just keep getting kicked out. So totally understand it.
It's aggravating.
It is. Yeah. You just paid a chunk of money for something that doesn't work. But I trust that the Payday devs will figure this out and kind of iron out all their issues. So I think that's sort of their modus operandi.
Yeah, I think that they'll fix it. Like the amount of content that they slapped into Payday 2, it makes sense that they would do the same for Payday 3. I do think that this kind of points out something that I've been seeing more often, really over the last 4 or 5 years, with games where they will just launch not ready.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, we'll just update it. And from a business perspective, I do understand it's like you need to launch your game because you need the revenue coming in. But like a game I had a huge problem with, and I love the game, but Warhammer 40K Darktide came out last.
Still not quite fixed.
Yeah, I still get crashes periodically. You know, again, I have a pretty good computer. Should not be happening. Like it just wouldn't run on basic hardware initially. There's just not a lot of content and stuff in it. There was no meta game really when the game launched, and like I get it, meta game shouldn't be like the first thing that's done, but like if you're like an only online game where there's no campaign, there's no single player thing, there's no story, it's like you need to have missions. You need to have the meta game figured out. And so like that is a game that I go back and play it now, and it's a lot better than where it launched as. But there's just a lot of these games that come out now, and I'm just like, this just still wasn't ready. And like even high profile games like Starfield, I feel like Starfield to me feels like maybe this should have been released in like December, because it still doesn't feel quite ready. So
I think that's a news story that we've seen a bunch of times and we'll continue to see for a while. Cyberpunk was a notable one. Starfield, I agree with you, could add a couple more months in the tank. A lot of games now launch in sort of an alpha or a beta. Alpha's too cruel for the way a lot of games release, but they figure they will eventually get fixed. And while I don't know, there is something to be said for a bad game, or a good game released early is a bad game forever. A good game released late is a good game forever. That's not the exact quote, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think it's kind of understandable with like games as service, where it's like, okay, the game's coming out of thing. There's a competing interest in like the business side of it is we need to release this game during Q3 to reach this like value. But I know most games like have their biggest sales and their biggest revenue when the game releases. And if you handicap yourself by releasing a game that's not finished and it gets a bunch of bad reviews, you probably get your pre-orders, but then people buying the game afterwards, you get a big drop off, and then people just pick it up on a sale, which loses you chunks of money. So
more money.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's an exception to the rule. Like I was talking about right at the beginning of this podcast, like Void Crew that's doing early access, but it's like they're a tiny little company. It makes sense that they need the revenue coming in. Starfield releasing, was it this month or last month? I guess about a month ago.
This month, yeah. Beginning of the month.
It's like, you could have used more time in the oven. And I know Microsoft could afford more time in the oven because they're talking about buying companies. So,
like, they could have given you another month.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they could have waited. So I think it's a standard we should start holding bigger companies to. Again, I think it's very cavalier to just be like, well, we'll just update it and we'll just update it and we'll just update it.
It's relying on us gamers to like be like pigs to a slop bucket, and they're gonna eat it anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, but speaking of eating it anyway,
so. I would have gone with games released too early, but this is I like that.
They both work. They both work. We got Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 this week, coming out alongside Phantom Liberty. You were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, Phil, that you had actually played some Cyberpunk 2.0. I have not played it, so I've only seen things online for the improvements. But if you could talk a little bit about your experience with it and where you feel the game's at.
Yeah. Well, I want to hit some of the bullet points that you have laid out here.
Please do.
So it's only on current gen consoles, which is it sounds elitist to me, but man, hell yeah.
No, it's not elitist of you at all. Stop that. If you're trying to play Cyberpunk 27 on a PlayStation 4, you're doing it wrong.
But well, you can play Cyberpunk 27, like Cyberpunk 1927 on a PlayStation 4. 2077, you need to be coming correct and playing on a current gen console.
Yeah. It's like everybody understands if you can't buy like a gaming PC, but a PS5 and Xbox Series X, those are somewhat affordable. You can do that.
They're available now.
Yeah.
So that's exciting, meaning they're not going to like be holding themselves back. Because like, you always get that feeling that when a game releases on both, like, man, what could they have done if they only released it on the PS5?
Yeah.
So that is an exciting aspect of it. They've completely revamped their skill trees so that it feels less like just seeing numbers go up, which is kind of an amazing thing. Like most of the one of my favorite things you can do now is you can block bullets with your katana. Ooh. That's like one of the abilities. Ooh. So it's like something that you physically see. You have like a dash move where you can jump in the air and like dash.
A little Ghost Runner vibe.
Yeah, they've kind of updated it so that the abilities kind of feel more in line with what you'd expect from CD Projekt Red, especially with The Witcher, where like every bit of advancement kind of you got where it was going, and like once you learned a new counter, there was something built around that in the game. New vehicle combat and customization. So I got to experience some of the vehicle combat because now you can, like when you're driving, you press a button and you like your doors will open, and then you pull out a pistol or whatever gun you have on you, and you can shoot that out the window. However, they've also added Mad Max style like cars with guns built into them. Mm-hmm. And they've added some abilities that you can use with your cyberware, where you can lock up a car. If you played Watch Dogs,
with the Watch Dogs hacking shit, I love that.
Yeah. That was what I was expecting in the game from the start. But now it seems like Cyberpunk is that game. Trying to think. Oh yeah, the cyberware is based on skill levels. So like you have to reach a certain amount before you can go on and get like some of the more powerful moves. The police have been updated so that they no longer just appear behind you. And then in the most recent update, they would just not come at all. Now they kind of come in a Grand Theft Auto ranked system, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, like it all kind of adds together in making the world feel more lived in. If the cops like show up when you hit somebody, but like big motorcycle. The military shows up when you like blow up a city square or whatever. You know?
Oh yeah. I heard there's like super ninja cops or something.
Yeah,
so that's exciting.
You played the original Cyberpunk for a while, right?
I did. I played it. I bought it 1 year after the original release because it was like, it had gotten a lot of hot fixes, but it had gotten a lot of updates, and I was like, okay, the game is probably in a stable enough place that I can play it.
Yeah.
So I might go back and play it for this though, because I honestly still had problems a year ago playing it. Which is a little unfortunate, but yeah, I would have lots of glitches, people walking through walls, me falling through the bottom of the map. I had a couple. There were 2 times where my like autosave was messed up, and I just kept dying when I would respawn immediately, and so I had to go back like probably like 4 hours in a hard save, and it was really wind out of my sails, you know, like I was just like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. Like, yeah. So, and it's a really good game, and it's gorgeous. And it looks like it actually, to me, the number one thing, like all of these gameplay improvements sound awesome. And I am here for a lot of them, even though I know like hardcore fans define some of the skills and stuff like that are a little bit more limiting. But I think that's cool that they're like, we know you can become this killer cyborg robot thing, we need to like pull you back a little bit. We don't want you to be Superman. So I like that, but the most important thing for me is that the game just looks like it runs really well and it looks beautiful, and that was what was promised, or at least to me, when they were advertising it to me. And now it 100%. Actually looks like it runs like that. And so I'm just excited for the performance that 2.0 has been getting out of this.
I will say, playing Cyberpunk, I played it at release because I was like, it can't be that bad. I don't mind bugs that much, and it was that bad. But what it felt like, even once a lot of the hot fixes came in, and they kind of did like a half measure where when the anime Cyberpunk Edge Runners came out on Netflix, they kind of matched, they timed that out with an update that increased the quality and got rid of some of the bugs. That was a lot better. But it still felt like a game where you were playing but watching it through glass. Like, you knew there was a great game back there.
Sure.
And you were just like, man, I wish I could touch it. It's right there, I know. And it feels like the game is that game now. Like, you're in the room with it and you can interact with actually the world that they built. Even a little thing, the quality of life they improved, where now your stamina isn't just your sprinting. It's like how you use your weapons, especially melee weapons.
Love that.
But just moving in the game, they nail that speed. This is a problem I have with Starfield. When someone's walking in Starfield and you're walking, your walking speed is so slow, but your running speed is like you have to constantly zoom back and forth to keep up with them.
It doesn't make any sense at all. It's like, why would you put a walk button in the game and then have the walk speed not be the walk speed that you see every other NPC use in the game? It makes absolutely no sense. It's a stupid thing. Bethesda, I need you to fix it, because it's a stupid thing, and I love Starfield, but I cannot just sit here and defend stupid things. So
there's so many moments where people are just walking and talking to you in that game.
Yes.
And you're like, God. But this game does a really great job of where I'm walking with an NPC and we're at the same pace, and like I look over at them, they look at me, and they like look at what they're doing. Like, it all just feels so smooth and feels almost like what a memory of Skyrim feels like.
Sure.
It kind of glazes over and gives you all of those bits of magic that your curiosity and imagination would have had to do before. So I would highly suggest it. I think you can get the game now for like $30. So if you get that and Phantom Liberty, it's the price of a $60, not even a full AAA release game. So yeah, if anyone hasn't played it, now is the time to play Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I will probably re-download and play through it again. So very excited about that. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's going to do it for us. We are hitting time. Any last note little things? Anything you wanted to bring up this week, gaming wise, that we didn't get around to?
No. I'm I don't know. Maybe next week we'll see if I've played some Sonic Frontier and have some more to say about it. It'll either be that or Phantom Liberty. I don't know which one, but it's a 50% possibility.
I'll
be here to talk about.
I don't think it's a 50% possibility, but I'm gonna be surprised if you come back next week and you're like, man, this weekend I played as Sage. I didn't even know who that was.
I played Sonic while watching Sonic. Best case scenario. How about you? Any last things before we bounce out of here?
No, I think we're good. We're moving into October next month, so we're gonna have some October releases, and the games are gonna keep on rolling. So I'm excited about that. And thank you guys for joining us on this week of the GGG podcast. If you enjoyed, please give us a subscribe. Please press that subscribe button down there, or the like button also helps. And then you can also find more of our content over on TikTok at Golden Glazed Gaming. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me, Phil. And we're out of here.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.